My whole life I was labeled and made out to be the problem, the scapegoat. Nothing I did was good enough. I was refused much warmth, love, guidance, or mercy. That was reserved for my older siblings and the world at large. It looked good on the outside, but on the inside, there was little more than pain and dysfunctional coping for the pain. I had learning difficulties that nobody knew about because I was too afraid to tell anybody. I just worked twice as hard, and I stressed out twice as much. I was typically ignored and rejected and neglected. I was allowed about 3 questions before I got in trouble for asking questions. I was told that I received all the love and attention possible and that I had a good family who cared about me. I was to believe this and never question it. Questions are dangerous in a narcissistic regime. I was raised in one such narcissistic regime. I woke up at 55 years of age realizing that after a lifetime of deliberate and crippling sabotage, I must stop the downward spiral or perish. I began asking the internet questions and not my mother's hand-picked therapists. The result, narcissistic abuse. I devoured the info. I got mad. I did what a lot of us scapegoats do. I went to the wrong people for help, the ones who were hurting me. I tried to force them to be accountable. I used some of their same tactics right back at them. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. These things started slowly unlocking the keys to tell me what had been happening to me. And when those keys unlocked the doors to my understanding, I got very angry. One of my first attempts at a YouTube video and a big cry for help, big, stupid, awkward cry for help. It didn't prove anything but made me look like a big old bully.
But it's not my fault.
It's not your fault. Whose fault is it? Is it my fault?
It's your fault. Your fault.
Okay.
Never, ever do this. All people saw was a vulnerable older lady. They did not see the terrified child that was me standing up to her finally, terrified of displeasing that face, terrified of the consequences, but absolutely desperate for it to change. You cannot prove it. Covert narcissism and its resultant abuse of a scapegoated child is never provable. Never. When you finally break and start coming at them with a fury, asking questions, demanding answers, using the same tone that they've been using with you in much more passive ways you can't pinpoint, and also regular knockdown dragouts that had been occurring since you could possibly ever remember, because that was your model, but are coming out in your fury at being treated like you just don't matter. Somebody called the cops on me, and I got in trouble. Where I thought I was exposing to the whole wide world the obvious abuse, Covert narcissistic abuse is tailored to one specific scapegoat, and that's you, and not the wide world. Nobody understands. Nobody. A police officer showed up wanting to take me to the local mental health institution for an evaluation. And despite a lifetime of feeling cowed, pressured, and pathologized, finally knowing my rights, I politely declined. I was contacted by Adult Protective Services and told I was under investigation, and if I did not call them, despite any phone phobias and fear that I might have, they would decide the case without my input. As a result of childhood trauma and neglect and outright abuse, I was terrified to use the phone, to talk, to speak, to tell anything on the phone, much less be interviewed for something I did terribly wrong, which was to expose the abuse and try to get some real help. But it backfired, just like it always does on the scapegoat. It's designed that way. But I was beginning to fight back a very unjust, unfair system in which I had been trapped and then blamed for being trapped. I began to fight back in ways that were unimpeachable. I could not trust people's word, so I had to film it. And filming it showed me a mirror, a reflection of my own ugly behavior, and I began to change. But first, it was very awkward, and I did not know my proverbial ass from a hole in the ground.
It's always a different story. It's always some different story. Tell me how that's possible. If you can, maybe you can't.
I was demanding that the people who had never been accountable to me to be accountable.
I think you need therapy.
And then they call that reactive abuse. When you want to tear them up, you want to go and tear them up. It doesn't matter what they look like. You want to tear them up for what they did to you.
You gonna hit me? You gonna hit me? Like you always did? You gonna take care of this physically?
I was flipped bodily. I put out a really stupid video in which I tried to prove narcissistic abuse by my family. I was asking for help, but it backfired. It made me look crazy because I was crazy because of the treatment. Desperate. The state of mind was desperate to trust the entire world with it, not trusting the local trusted ways. So what happened? How did you get out of that? I isolated myself. I stopped playing their games. I stopped chasing them. I started taking care of myself, taking responsibility for myself and what I could do. I stopped listening to them. I stopped valuing their opinions of me whatsoever. They were quite low to begin with, and they always were. And that's the way it was for me. Not provable. totally backfired. Nobody heard the words that I said. They only heard my tone. I was programmed to accept all the blame and shame and shut down, but I refused to because this time I had given it all to God, and He let me know that I was worthy of life. So where I had been suicidal at least once a year for decades because of this abuse, it changed. I finally asked, what's going on? What's wrong? I knew something physical was wrong, but I was kept out of the loop entirely. And I was told that my mother had dementia. My dear mother died 3 months after I finally found out that she had dementia. And she died 3 months later. When I found out, I stopped being angry at her. Even though that meant she totally got away with everything she did to me. Which is the hallmark of the narcissist. They get away with everything. You can't hold them accountable. That's the game. The most I could get her to admit was we made some mistakes in response to deep, abiding grief, hurt, and a ruined life. An unsupported child, an unliked child, a scapegoated child who turned to art and music and expression to escape, to survive. And it comes out in my art. In fact, I felt kind of guilty for selling one of my paintings that was entitled Joy, but had nothing to do with joy. It had everything to do with pain and pretending like it didn't hurt. There was one person in my entire life who got it. She said, "That's not joy. All I see is pain and tension." I don't even have a photograph of that painting because it was so painful. But herein lie the roots of Neo-Expressionism, which is all about emotion and getting it out on the canvas. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. And thank you for your support.